Here we go.
Developing tomorrow's.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
now we're live. Okay. Earlier it was showing scheduled.
There we go. All right. And
I still have yet to see on Facebook and LinkedIn.
let's see what we got here.
Okay, now I can see. Yes. There you go.
Got it?
Yes. Well, now we are absolutely live.
Good
Welcome.
job.
Welcome, everyone, for our new episode here on Rise and Thrive Empowering Minds. Whether you're joining us on live or catching the replay, we're very, very glad you're joining us with me, Cindy Marie, and of course with Coach T, Antoine Thompson, on our second episode. Coach T, what do you say?
Oh, I'm excited to be here, and I'm really glad I'm not hearing the echo like the last time. Felt like I was hearing myself talk and hearing myself. So this is going to be so much better for me, and I'm super excited for us to talk about an amazing topic, which I think a lot of people can benefit from, and that is building deeper connections, which is the key to thriving relationships.
Yes. However, Coach T, before we dive into this very important topic for both personal and professional lives, I think it's also would be valuable for our viewers or listeners to understand how we actually end up having this episode or this topic. Would you recall how we actually ended up choosing this episode?
How we started? I think, well, for me, I mean, obviously, we're talking about
Yeah.
building deeper connections, and it's our relationship is a perfect example of building deeper relationships. How we connected through a mutual networking person, and
Mhm.
we got on a call and we started talking, kind of found out what we do, and we're really interested in what each other did. But more importantly, it wasn't just about us both wanting what's best for young people and for adults to develop better lives. We realized that we were becoming better people the better we knew about each other. We shared deeper understanding, thoughts, ideas, and suggestions and things that we've done. And we found
Mhm.
out that the more we talked and more we communicated, the more we realized we had more in common, the more we communicated. And then that led to us being a part of a very unique group of people, which is called the Village of Inspiration, which is a very unique and special group of people that are all about building deep connections. And for
Mhm.
me, that's where I think it was led us to be where we are today.
Yeah. So which, yeah, that's exactly actually the how do you call it, the first step all the way to where we are right now. But I think how we end up coming up with this topic specifically, we were discussing, I think, self-awareness, self-doubt, healthy boundaries, and then we exchange our experiences with podcast hosting, and that's kind of like led us to have a natural flow of, oh, okay, actually there are a lot of things happening with building deeper connections with podcast hosting, and we just naturally have that in-depth conversation, and we realize that, okay, I think this is the main topic that we can discuss for the second episode. And yeah, and so I think that's where we led to make a decision that this is going to be the next episode, not only because this is super important, but also a lot of people can relate, not only on our side from podcasting or coaching, but also for everyone in our personal and professional lives. And speaking of building deeper, authentic, meaningful connections, Coach T, we want to talk about our understanding here. What do you understand about authentic, meaningful, or deeper connections? How does it look like for you?
For me, it's going beyond surface communication. A
Mm,
big part is about listening and understanding what people are saying,
mm,
as opposed to just having a back and forth conversation. Most
Yeah.
people hear to respond and they don't
Yes.
hear to listen. And I think
Yes.
it's a big part of building relationships because it's a learning opportunity when you have
Mm,
these relationships and deeper connections. But one of the things I'm going to throw in here, because I thought about this before we got on too, is when if a person were to think about um, somebody that they've known that they say they have that's like their best friend they've known for years and they have this great friendship.
mm,
If you think about all the time that's gone and they haven't had a say regular communication with them, conversation, even email messaging or whatever, but if they were to get together in a room, they would
yeah.
pick up where they left off years ago. That's a
Yeah.
perfect example of a deep connection. And it's also a perfect example of what we've lost because we don't have those kind of connections, but because we don't have those type of conversations to build
Mm,
those relationships, which goes back to the point I was making, listening to learn and not
mm.
listening to respond and having conversations.
Yeah. I think that's very true because what I have experienced also in my journey, uh, what I have been practicing and living is really to listen, to understand people. And I love when you mention about, friendship where they don't normally or frequently communicating, but the moment they catch up, it's just as if nothing, separate them. And I think the bottom line is that what I'm hearing from what you said, there's a natural, smooth flow of connection. It's not force, I think. And for me, how I see deeper or authentic, meaningful connection, it's all about your why you want to build that connection with that person. Maybe do you see some similarities or commonalities with the values? And the most important is that I think also how much do you want to invest in this relationship or connection that you're building. So, for example, for you and I, as a collaboration with this project that we have, how much in depth are we willing to know one another, and how much also honesty and vulnerability and authenticity and our genuine and sincerity are we willing to open up ourselves so that we're able to really have that deeper and meaningful connections, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. But there's something you said I think that really jumps out, and that is the word why. Why would
Mm,
you want to build a deep connection with people beyond your close circle of friends,
mm,
family? It's the why, and I think it's just like anything else when people talk about why they do what they do. Once you
mm.
understand the why, the building blocks are easier to stack. And same
Mm,
thing with building deep relationships. If you understand why you're building them, and going back to why just having surface conversations, there has to be a why you're building that relationship with a person, other than just say, oh, you're talking about the weather or whatever it is you have in common. There is a why because there's something everybody has to offer you,
yeah.
but you'll never know if you don't build a relationship. And no, every relationship is not going to be a huge friendship, but it's an acquaintance that you can always call back on because of the commonality that you have with each other. But you'll never
Mhm.
know that unless you invest. And you use the word invest also. If you invest in that commitment to building a relationship and finding out where to go, but there has to be a why you're engaging and starting that particular relationship.
Yeah. Why, which means the intention of your connection with that person. And speaking of that intention and then why, I think we can move forward to very, very interesting part of the topic for everyone, not only for teens or preteens, but also for us. And I'm talking about the social media platform connections, right? Um, where, I think in my observation, a lot of people now becoming obsessed and addicted with more likes, more comments, more group chats, or more followers, but still not enough for them. But they wanting more. And I'm curious, Coach T, why do you think that this is happening? That this research shows, you and I would know that despite of this increased numbers of followers or likes, comments or group chats that you have, you still feel alone or something is missing. Why do you think that's happening?
Because there's something missing in people's lives, and they feel like that social media is filling a void, and it's only
Mm,
and the biggest problem with that, I think, is it's temporary. It's not permanent. And
mhm,
I think I mentioned to you, and I've said it before on a couple podcasts of mine and ones I've been on. I've challenged kids to share with me in depth about
mm.
their followers, if you will, on social media. Like, tell me more about these people. And when I ask them, there's a long pause first. Secondly, then they smile because they realize the point that I'm trying to make is they don't really know these people, but it's about the dopamine hits that we get because we like to get the likes, we
Uh,
like to get the followers, but it's only temporary. And what can you do with likes and followers? You can just talk about them. Hey, guess what, Cindy Marie? I got 10,000 followers. Okay, great. That's wonderful. But what about those 10,000 followers? What can you tell me? And the other part of it is it's not real. And I'll give you a perfect example.
mm,
There were big TikTok influencers that turned out to be totally fake, but everybody believed that they were real and they had millions of followers, but it
mhm,
turned out that they weren't real. And so
mm,
you take young people that think having a lot of followers and having a big
mm,
impact on social media makes them important, when in
mm.
reality that's only temporary. And that's what we're talking about. We want them to build genuine, real, authentic relationships with people offline. Even they
Mm.
can do it online too, but be willing
Yeah,
to be intentional with building those relationships.
yeah, yeah. And I think I've also opened up or shared with you prior to starting my Empower Your Life show podcast. I have provided or shared my first episode when I admittedly was really obsessed with the numbers, with the likes and all of that. And I can tell now the reason why. It's because I had a different mission, that I didn't know at that moment because I was looking for attention. I was looking for valuing my worth, from the external. And then I realized that it's not sustainable. So, as you and I, we have talked about the integrity. I told myself that, this is, I, I think it's very important for us to share it that it is normal that we go through with that. The great thing is that while it is normal, you also have the ability and the possibility to get out of that is through being open to yourself that you thought that it will fill whatever missing in you, and you realize that you have to attend to it and step back. And why am I doing what I'm doing? What am I avoiding? And most of the cases, what we are avoiding is that just looking into what we're really looking for. And that actually, I think, led to the barriers, right? The barriers that keeping us our relationships to the surface. And I'm super curious. I'm not sure whether you have covered that earlier when you mentioned about this story. What probably common reasons many people holding themselves back from building that deeper connections? Do you know any possible? I'm sure you know a lot. Many reasons why we hold ourselves back from deeper connections. What are those potential reasons?
I think all with anything, Cindy Marie, when we talk about authenticity and being genuine, personal experiences always are a good way to share insight. And
Mm,
for me, it is about vulnerability.
mm,
Before I even started podcast, one of the things that held me back, there was a part of a stage of my life that I refused to talk about, and I refused to talk about it because I thought it was a detriment to me and to who I was as a person. But in
mm,
reality, I am who I am because of that. And
yeah.
that was my upbringing, being in that my biological father was not a good father, he wasn't a good husband. And so I always felt like that's such a negative. So I didn't talk about it a lot. Well, turns
Mm,
out that is my why. That is my story. because you and
Mm,
I are having this conversation because my father came into my life and adopted my older brother and I and gave us a life that I'm living now. And one of the things that the morals and values he instilled in us is what I'm doing to this day. But for the longest
mhm,
time, I wasn't willing to be open, authentic, and real with my story. But once I
mhm,
did, it made it easier for me to talk about, but it also
mm,
allowed me to be able to take lessons from my own experience to share, not to
mm.
change, not to make somebody live like I did, but to share what you can go through, but also how you can overcome what you go through. So I think that also holds a lot of people back because they're afraid to be real and authentic with themselves. And they only share what, going back to the social media parts, they only share the so-called highlights of their lives. Well, we all
Yes.
have highlights and low parts of our lives, but we have to be willing to share those. If we're not willing to share those, then you're not being real, not only with the person that you're trying to build a relationship with, but guess what? You're not being real with yourself. And if you're not being
Mm.
real and true to yourself, you cannot be real and true to anybody else in your life.
Yeah. That's a lot. And from what I'm hearing, actually, what my understanding that holding people back from building that deeper, authentic, and meaningful connections really the fear of rejection, and also showing up our vulnerability. And I think still is many our society still have conditioned many of us that vulnerability showing as a weakness, your honesty, your whatever, the good and the bad side of you. I think when you show that to people, it kind of reflected as you're weak. You have to stay strong every single day. And like what you said, coming back to social media, I think we always portray the highlights. We don't see the entire picture. So I think, and I think that goes to comparisons, right? The more that we see just the highlights of the people that we're following. And I've spoken with a lady yesterday, no, the other day, that not lady, but a man. um, he was challenged by the comparisons in social media. And I said, I've been there too. Not that I'm saying that I overpassed that, but I think the thing that I've learned through overcoming comparison is that really focusing on your journey. So going to building that deeper connection is that how and what exactly you want to experience in connecting with this person, that you feel that we are having similar attributes, we have similar values and traits. And I think the other thing that, apart from fear of rejection and the vulnerability, what holding people back is really attending to themselves, that they're not willing. So for example, for my case, I've always been authentic and I've always been transparent with people, and my transparency, my directness will not be able to welcome to everybody. Some people will take me as you're too direct, you're too sensitive, or whatever that may be that they portray about me based on their perspective or based on their lenses. So I think the understanding of how much in depth are you willing to to provide to that person, that also a reflection of how deep your connection will be. Because for example, you and I, we practice integrity. If you're not able to provide that integrity to yourself, how will you able to attract that integrity from other people? There's no way, right? There's no way. So I think what holding many people back from building that deeper, meaningful, and authentic connections, apart from vulnerability, fear, is looking into yourself. What are those things that you value? What are those things that triggers you? Because you will be triggered by this other person, and you can't take it personally because that person has their own narrative in their lives, and probably out of sincerity and genuine, they provide you something and you get triggered. And
Yeah.
like what you said from the beginning, that connection actually path to learn and grow. not about themselves, but actually about yourself. So
Yeah.
I think that's where I see what many people holding themselves back of building this deeper connection that many people right now having a challenge with, don't you think?
Yeah, I do, and I think some of what you said kind of bundles what I was going to mention and kind of piggyback on what you said. And it's three words, and that's respect, trust, and understanding. They have to,
Mm,
respect not only themselves but the person that they're building a relationship. Respect goes both ways, and I think that's also something that's lost in translation. Is
mhm.
everybody always feels like, well, you have to trust me, you have to trust me. Well, no, it goes both ways, and
Yes.
that's the respect part, and then the understanding, going back to understanding why you're in the relationship building stage that you're in. It's not about what can I get out of this person and in this relationship. That's one of the other things I think a lot of people do in so-called building what they call deep relationships is they build it to get something. I've
Yeah.
experienced it a lot. I'm
Mhm.
sure you have. A lot of people that are listening probably have done the same thing. You think you're
Yeah.
building something genuine and authentic and real, only to find out that these people are only doing it to get something from you. And once they get what they want, they're gone. Well, that hurts trust for that next relationship.
Mhm.
So that's something that you learn from, we all learn from our failures. So that's
Yeah.
a failed relationship building opportunity, but it's also a learning opportunity for that next one. It's a give and take. All right, so I gave a
Yeah.
little bit. Well, I better get something so that I'm getting and they're giving, so they're not just taking what they want and they're gone. And the other part that's really important about that is once you realize that person is not giving and they're just taking, that's where you understand, okay, this is not one of those deep building relationships. This is
Mm.
just an acquaintance that wants something. Hey, that's all fine and dandy, but understanding that is really important. So trust, respect, and understanding are so key to building deep relationships, both personal and in social environments.
Yeah. Which I think, based on my observation and experiences, what I notice is that people know these terms, but the depth of really understanding respect, understanding, and what's the other one? Sorry,
Trust,
trust.
trust,
Well, of
respect, and
course, very
understanding.
important.
Yeah.
Respect, understanding, and trust. I think we have different understanding or level of understanding with this particular trait, and so I think it's very important as well to emphasize that your level of understanding of respect, trust, and um,
Respect.
understanding are different. So, for example, why I'm saying this, the level of understanding for these three things are very, very individual. It's because, for example, one lady has been in the relationship, abusive relationship, and their level of understanding, trust, and respect are totally different. So if we see that there's a potential that for us to help them to come out from that abusive relationship, is that for us to provide them what exactly how it looks like. This is how it looks like, so they will have a different view that, oh my god, all the while I thought in my abusive, which they might not know that they are in abusive relationship, and you having this thinking to help them get out of that, you're giving them the light of totally different view of respect, understanding, and trust, and it's going to be overwhelming for them. And so I think that's why, going back to what you said, it's very important that we understand the other person, what are the level of their understanding with this deeper connections. And the more that we allow them to open up themselves, the more that there's an importance of discernment, right? We don't just observe based on what they say, but we also observe based on their movement, right? That sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times, because we can practice and master what we want to say, but the movement, the energy cannot lie. So I think, I know it's kind of like drag all the things that you've said, but I think it's very important that we emphasize that what's your level of understanding. It's very important that you communicate it back to other person for as long as both of you are committed to invest for that deeper, authentic, meaningful connection.
Yeah. And to take that a step further, you've done it a couple times since we've been on here, and I hope some people have caught on to it. Whenever I've explained something or a point to you, you've always started by paraphrasing what I've said.
Yes.
To number one, the first thing that happens is I'm going like, oh my God, she's listening to what I'm saying. Well, that's an engaging conversation, first and foremost, right? So you
Yes.
summarize what you've heard. That lets the person know that you're listening and you're not just hearing them talk. You're listening to what they say, but at the same time, you're also thinking. That's one of the reasons that we're able to continue this conversation is because we're taking points, things away. Okay, I hear it. Oh, I can add this to that, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of setting that back there. That's one of those things. This is where we talk about the respect part of that's the respect part of building relationships because you respect what the person's saying, but you also let them know that you respect them by paraphrasing or repeating what they've said to make sure that they know you've heard them and that you've listened to what they said and you have something to add. And when
Yeah.
you add things, that's where those are where I was talking about earlier about building blocks. That's a great way
Yeah.
to do that. And then we also know you're talking about body language. It's the verbal and nonverbal communication speak volumes when you talk about
Yeah.
relationships. When you see that person, do you light up or you like, hey, how you doing? You start a conversation. Well, that's very casual. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I know when I see people, there's certain people I see, I just light up.
Mm.
Or when I get on a call and you're just really excited, like, oh, hey, how you doing? Whatever. That speaks volume. That's also a level of trust and respect in building a
Mm.
relationship. That way, when that person sees you, like, man, he really looked forward to seeing me. That is so great. I can't wait to see him again. And you never know where it goes from there, but that's being committed and intentional with your
Mm.
communication, be it verbal or nonverbal.
Love it because you have tackled so much when it comes to breaking that barriers, right? You mentioned
Right.
paraphrasing and also the intentional. Um, would there be anything? I'm very curious actually because this particular connections that we're talking about not only specifically challenge for teens and preteens, though they are more exposed with social media compared to us, but we also experiencing that on our journey. So, and I love to challenge people, including myself, because a lot of people would have excuses. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. It's too difficult. Da, 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 da. So I'm super curious. Would there be any simple practice or practices that you feel not only help the people that you have helped to build that deeper connections, but also help yourself in terms of having authentic and deeper, meaningful connections, say with us or with your colleagues or with your peers? What are those things that pretty practical, but also doable that people, when they hear and listen to us now, right on, they can practice it?
Oh, well, I think one of the first things is being consistent.
Ah.
Consistency over depth of conversation. Like, for instance, I
Mm.
just use this one. Say you and I have this in-depth conversation today, and we don't talk for another month. Well, there's a lot of time for things to kind of settle and go by the wayside. But if we are consistent with our communication, doesn't have to be same topic, but we're consistent and intentional. Well, guess what? Now you're sending a message to me that you care about what I'm talking about, and I send
Mm.
you a message that I care about what you're talking about, and I value
Mm.
what you have to say, and you value what I have to say. And you're probably going like, man, what can I learn from Coach T this time? Or I'm like, what can Cindy Marie, what kind of nugget can she drop that I can maybe use or kind of help me build, relationship. And for parents and kids, one of the things I think is so great when you're talking about building deeper relationships is, families are have a little fractured too because their communication is not as strong as it used to be. But there's one
Yeah.
word that I think is really important when having conversations, and it's not the word why, it's the word because. Because when you say because, I'm opening a door and I'm asking you, and I want you to share back with me Typically
Yeah.
when people say why, it's like, oh geez, I mean, because I said so, because that's how I feel. It's like, whoa, okay, calm down. But if you say because, well, because, now they start thinking a little bit more, and they're a little more reserved, and they're more intentional with the response, and
Mm,
it kind of lowers the tension a little bit, if you will, and the anxiety. So for families, it's about um, how you communicate, and it's like anything, like you've probably heard, it's not what you say but how you say it. uh,
yes.
and it's building communications, and we can even do this, is for even adults and kids, but I always love to have what's called thought-provoking conversations.
Hmm.
And a perfect example would be like, hey Cindy Marie, what can you name the one time you got in the most trouble in school? Well, yes, that's the first response most people do. They laugh because they're like, "Oh my gosh, of course I know." Well, they start laughing. Well, guess what? When you start laughing, the whole mood changes, because now I'm eager to find out what that is, and you're
Yeah.
probably eager to share it because we're going to have a great laugh. Well, guess what happens? Now that probably leads to me sharing mine, and then that leads to
Hmm.
something else, something else. Now it's like, "Oh my gosh, this is a conversation that's becoming a part of a deeper relationship, and it's opening a different door to that relationship, and that that
Hmm.
connection that we have." It's like, oh, okay, you're not as kind of cut and dry and boring as I thought. You had some really exciting in your life. But it also leads to the part about vulnerability, is
Mm,
don't be afraid to share, because you could be sharing something somebody's going through, and share with them how you've overcome that. But you'll never
mhm,
know that if you don't share it. And so I think being vulnerable and using choice of words to engage people to make them feel
mm.
comfortable.
Yeah. That's huge. Speaking about relationship or family, like what you said, it is the most challenging. And I would say that for me, I have done my best, and it's not as easy as I wanted to. And I think for me, building that deeper connections, which we've talked about previously, what are those topics that we could talk about in the next episodes will be healthy boundaries. It's challenging, especially for family. I'm going to speak about my own journey, being vulnerable, that as much as I want to have that deeper connection with my family, it's challenging. It's because they are not as open as I wanted to. And I have done my very best to, to kind of adjust and bend for where they are. And it's just always conflict, and it's really against always with my core values. And the other thing that I always remind myself is to pray, and send love from far with my family. It's because, we are all in this together. We're all one. So you don't want to have that negativity within you, because that also going to radiate back to them. So I personally have a challenge with that, and I'm not going to deny that in terms of building deeper connection with my family. But there's a healthy boundaries. I know in time, when God allow that to happen, it'll open on the door itself. In the meantime, I continue the mission or the purpose that I have for my own, to help others, and also be vulnerable and be honest to tell to people that, hey, you know, I am sharing my authenticity with all of you, but that doesn't mean that I don't have experiences or challenges in my life, that I'm superwoman. No, it's just that I think on how we handle things in terms of building deeper connections. Now, you also mentioned presence. You can be as intentional, you can listen, but if you are not fully present, you know, the energy will be different. And I don't know how you can actually able to process the conversation without being present. That can be challenging, but that could be, someone can master that. I don't know if you know anybody that can be. Can you? Do you know
No,
anyone?
no, that is a great point. And I'd love to touch on that, because being present. I was on a podcast with a guy, and this we talked about this, and he was asking about how coaches interact with kids. So I'm
Uh-huh.
going to give you an example, and this pertains to adults as well as it does kids. So when I'm
Mm-hmm.
working with kids, one of the first things I do is assess them during the conversation. It's
Mm,
about you have to hit that spot. You have to know, hey, that's how I get in. That's my way in. It's
mm,
something that's in common. So you go deeper with what they're comfortable with, and once you hit that spot where they're comfortable, that's when they relax, and then you kind of let them lead, and you kind of let them take you where they're comfortable with, and then you go back and then you're sharing, and then that makes them more
mm.
comfortable. So yeah, everybody has this power, and most people are like, oh, I can't do that, I can't do. Yeah, you absolutely can if you're genuine, authentic, and intentional with what and your why of why you're building that conversation. You mentioned earlier about being willing. Well, it's not what you're capable of, is what you're willing to do, and you
Mm,
mentioned that, and that's what it's about. What are you willing to do to build that relationship? Are you willing to
mm,
be vulnerable? And that means if I'm it's like the example you gave, we're talking about your family. Well, I was going to tell you, with you working with other people, you're going to find your own way to connect with your family by helping other people if you're intentional with why you're helping them, because you're teaching yourself how to deal with your family,
yeah,
right? So they parallel one another. And I think sometimes people feel like there's a wall. I do this, but I got to do this different. Well, no, it's all the same, but you have to
yeah.
understand it. I've I've been through and I'm going through the same thing. And this is the epiphany that I come to, is there is a way in for everybody, but are you willing? Are you
Mm,
willing to put in the time, energy, and effort to make it happen?
yeah. And from the first that you responded back to what I have shared, the first thing that came to mind is the interest. Your interest to know the person deeper. I mean, of course, if there's a commonality and similarities, then how interested are you to going back to invest to that person? And I think also another aspect that I feel very valuable for many people, and you know me, I'm a very advocate of authenticity. Everything starts within. So, what are your values? You know, what's so important? What truly matters to you? Because going back to your intention, if your intention is very transactional, and yet deep inside of you, you want a deeper connection, there's a conflict. You've got to be clear, super clear and intentional of what you're looking for deeper connection. Maybe your deeper connection have different interpretation. So again, I think going back to our first conversation about understanding what is deeper connection to you, then you work on that. And I'm a big believer, and it doesn't have to be only for connection, it can be for anything that who you're representing yourself, you're basically attracting that person. So if you want to really build a deeper, authentic, meaningful connection, you're going to write down all of those important values and you have to be that person. You can't be just, pretending that I'm that. And then you expect that person will come to you. Guess what? The energy doesn't lie.
Yeah. So you give me a perfect example to use where, we're talking about personal relationships, but, personal relationships also carry over to business, because that's how
Yes.
you build good business relationships, right? And so for you all that are listening, Cindy Maria and I had a conversation a few months ago, and it was me being very frustrated with how I'm approached on social media about people
Mm,
trying to work with me. And the reason it frustrated me is because of what we're talking about now. None of these people are genuine or authentic. They never take the time to find a way in, like I was talking about, making that commonality, that connection. It's all about what can they get out of me? How can they get my business? Well,
mm,
if you knew anything about what I do, just the scope of what I do, it is about as deep, genuine, and authentic as it comes. Because
yeah.
I'm talking about the heart of our future, and that's kids. And if you have to ask me a blanket question about, hey, what makes you do what you do? I have no time for you, because I can read through that. There's nothing genuine, there's nothing authentic about that. But if you go, I absolutely love your episode about your podcast, Teen Speak. If you go in depth and make a connection with me and make me go, oh my gosh, you really appreciate what I do. but nobody comes across that way. And I'm even getting a little upset now. And the reason it bothers me so much is I'm trying to teach the next generation of how not to do that. But yet we have adults that don't know how to make a connection. So
Mm.
that's one of the reasons I want to share that as a kind of a personal experience. And Cindy Marie kind of reminded me, hey, I know you don't let it get you all worked up, but it gets me worked up because this is my livelihood. It's what I do. I'm trying to teach young people how to be real, genuine, and authentic, but yet they're surrounded by people that aren't. So that's why that bothered me so much. But I wanted to use that as an example of adults have to be very intentional with the relationship that they're building, be it personal or business, and make the connection to make people feel like you really care about what they're doing, not just care about getting something from them.
Yeah, and this is also why I love the collaboration that we do, because you're focusing more on the kids, and I'm focusing on more on the adults. And it's not a surprise, but many people think just because you're adult, people would have to treat you adult or grown up way. No, actually, sometimes adults are more sensitive than the kids, and
Yeah,
adults have more things to unpack than the kids. So the place or the space of learning will be more difficult or challenging because of the ego and pride, all of those experiences that build up our personality, our character, our profile, that sometimes or most of the cases it's just so challenging that I don't have to reach out to people because people actually used to reach out to me. Why would I need to reach out? Well, the question is, w- okay, nobody needs to reach out. You don't have to reach out to anybody, but you want to build a deeper connection, right? So how do you think that you are going to build a deeper connection if you're not going to initiate things? So,
right.
and this is why for me, when having a conversation like this, or even on the session, or just a casual interaction with people, I always remind, especially when you're in the leadership role, that we don't build followers, we build more leaders. So if you want to be a great leader in the position that you do, you have to act on it. Act on
Yeah,
it, meaning to say you're always gonna remind yourself that I'm a lifelong learner, I'm a lifelong student. I've never been expert with anything, because constantly, yes, I can be a teacher, but I'm also a student, meaning that I'm open and willing for both ways. I can share my knowledge, but at the same time, I can absorb some knowledge from other people, and it doesn't matter where it coming from. It doesn't have to be coming from the same level as you. It can come from the best cleaner in your company, and you gain some wisdom from that. And I think you know that's one of many things that I feel that also causing the conflict, or the not having a deeper and meaningful connections, is because of the type of the people that we want to build deeper connections. We choose we have the category or the profile that we want to connect, but it doesn't matter, for as long as you're genuine and sincere and authentic with your connection. And I always say that life goes around and around. They might not be somebody at this moment, but later on, they might be somebody, and you didn't treat them in the connection that you want, then guess what will happen?
yeah,
You're like giving me that smile.
yeah, yeah. No, no, no. You're 100% right. Um, there was the other thing I was going to mention. You were talking about being authentic and genuine. Something we didn't mention was, you know, a lot of times, and this is just from the kids that I've worked with and talking with them, a lot of times they're not who they want to be because they're trying to be something they think people want them to be. And when they do
Yes.
that, you have no way of building a genuine and authentic relationship with anybody because you're not being who you are. But
Yeah.
it's the saying people say, be who you are, because there's only one you, and you're
Yeah.
unique and you're different, and you're not supposed to be what other people want you to be. You're supposed to be who you are. And that
Yes.
means that sometimes you have to let things go.
Mm.
It's not a lot of times people hang on to things that they realize is, hey, this is only short term. And the best example I can give you, this is about 3 years ago, having a round this table discussion with some teenagers. And the question I asked them was, what was important to them in school? Was it their academics, athletics, or social activity?
Mhm.
Well, one young lady said, well, when I first got to high school, it was all about social. I signed up and took all the classes, same classes that my friends took because I wanted to be around them, want to be around them. She said, by my sophomore year, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not setting myself up for college because I'm
Mhm.
focusing on the social aspect and not taking the classes that I need to be prepared to go to college. So
Mhm.
her whole thought process changed, like, okay, it's about my academics. I got to get that done. So this is where being something you're not, and then you're realizing, so she figured it out early enough, which is great. And she's
Yeah.
now in her going to her finishing up her first year of college. But other people don't, because it's a safety net for them. As
Yeah.
long as they feel like they're part of something, oh, okay, I'm good. But they don't realize that it doesn't last forever. And especially if you're not putting in enough to build what you have and to find out, okay, this is genuine, this is real, or this is just where I'm comfortable. And then now when they all go about and do their thing, you're left holding the bag trying to figure out, well, where am I now? So that's why I
Mhm.
think building a relationship for young people is so important, so they can distinguish early on good relationship. This is an acquaintance, this is a friendship, and this is for life. Like I say, people come in your life for a reason or a season, and they have
Yes.
to determine, is it a season or are they in your life for a reason?
Yeah. And it's important as well for I just want to add on that it's important to have the right support system because for kids, as far as my observation, it's not as easy as to live as their authentic self because of the condition as well and the demands coming from the parents, so I think what I would add to what you said is that be open to explore and experiment. And it's okay to make mistakes, really, as long as you are in a place of curiosity and you want to learn, you want to grow. And when you meet the right support system, be open with them and just keep on asking curious questions and really molding to what kind of person you want to become, and also be okay that things might not be happening according to what you plan, but at the same time, again, it's going to, you might feel disappointed because of the people that you connected with, it didn't reciprocate, but that's okay, because that through that, it's the same thing as romantic relationship, right? You learn that, okay, through that depth of conversations I have with these people, I've learned that these are the things. So what you've said earlier, assessment, do reassessing your personal journey, your relationship with people, and also the situation where you at and who are you being. So I think it's very important with that. Now, we can cover this conversation on and on and on and on. And I'm loving it. I think we're just getting started into a depth, but unfortunately, we want to make sure that a lot of people will also have enough insights and valuable information, also getting to know of us and what we do. And so I'm very, very grateful for this conversation, because again, through this conversation, Coach T and I, we get to know one another, and we, as much as possible, we do our best to be as authentic, as genuine and sincere with one another. And so, Coach T, I'm sure that there are a lot of people by watching or listening right now with us, with our episode. They're super curious for other things that you do, how they can support you, where they can reach out. So, where?
Yes, well, thank you for that. First and foremost, my website is coachteescorner.com. And also, I host a podcast, Developing Tomorrow's Leaders, where I interview people like Cindy Marie and others that are a part of that special group I mentioned, Village of Inspiration. And I co-host a podcast with one of those members of the Village of Inspiration, Keith Senzer. We have a podcast called Team Speak, Empowering Today's Youth, where we interview middle school, high school, and college students. And what's great about this is they come on and talk about challenges that they've gone through, but also the strategies that they use to overcome those. And I also am an author, having written a book,
There
The
you
Sea
go.
of
Please
Success. Let me
showcase.
see if I can see this thing. Make sure I can get see it so you can see it. The Sea of Success, the ultimate
There you
guide to
go.
success for preteens and teens. It is breaks down what we talked about here on our first episode, resilience, but also about relationship building, so on and so forth. And all of my social media handles are at Coach T's Corner. And I welcome anybody to reach out. And if you have a teen or preteen that needs some guidance or direction, I'm here to educate, support, and inspire them to greatness. And now
Oh,
it's
there you
your turn to tell us
yeah.
about you and how they can get in touch with you.
Thank you. I love that you showcased that book. I must get the hard book. Hint. Just kidding. Well, for everyone who would like to connect with me, website is www.cindymarie.net, and my social handles, everything will be at Cindy Marie Azure. So you are most welcome to follow me on my Instagram, on my Facebook, also on LinkedIn, and follow our YouTube channel at Cindy Marie Azure. Also, just like Coach T, I also have a podcast called Empower Your Life with yours truly, Cindy Marie, where we have our thought leaders, just like Coach D himself. We express, not impress, our stories, our journeys, and practical tools. And most importantly, we help one another to bring that authenticity, that it's a safe space for us to be who we truly are. And also, the other thing is that, yeah, you can feel free to connect with me. Most of the cases will be LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy for us to connect, and I'm all up for growth and authenticity. So just drop me a message. And so, Coach T, what to
Yes.
expect next? We're just getting started with our live series.
Oh my gosh, we got so many topics that we want to talk about. I think we got to figure out which one because if you guys have any idea, and if, for those that go back and watch this later, if there's something you'd like for us to talk about, or if you have any
Mhm.
comments or suggestions or anything like that, feel free to leave comments because we want this to be interactive, and
Yes.
we have quite a few topics actually to choose from. So unless we get some recommendations, Cindy Marie, I think we can come up with one of our other, I think, 8 or 9 that we have on our list to choose from. But I would love to talk about anything. I mean, relationships, communication. We talked about resilience. I think leadership would be a great thing to talk about
Mhm.
because you mentioned it earlier. We want, both of us are trying to create leaders. Trying to
Mhm.
build the next generation of leaders, and you're trying to make the current leaders even better leaders. And some people that are followers that don't realize they are leaders, we got to teach everybody how to be a leader because everybody has leadership capabilities. They just don't realize it. And I think it's important for them to understand that they do.
Yes. Amen to that. Yes, indeed. That's the reason why we're covering this live series is for us to bring that awareness to many people that you are safe to be who you truly are. And I know we know that it's not going to be as easy to unpack who you truly are and what would be your mission and purpose, but no late. There's no late here on this world that we're living. Every time that you felt that this is the moment for you to uplift your authenticity, that's the moment. And you might be surprised that the support system is just around the corner. I love that. Coach T's corner, right?
There you go.
And
That's good. Play on words, play on words.
exactly. And so, if you're watching right now on the replay, we would love to have you on our next episode. Bring your questions, bring your stories, and bring your true self because, like what Coach D mentioned, it's an interactive. So, it's not just two of us. When you join us on live episode, you can definitely drop us a message. Again, if any questions, of course, if we already wrap up with our timing, then definitely we can drop you a message directly. And yeah, so before we wrap up, Coach D, is there any final message that you want to leave us today for our live series?
Well, I think just to sum up what we talked about, it is about being consistent with building relationships, being
Mhm.
intentional. To me, is really, really important, and respecting, trust, and understanding. When you're building these relationships is really important. It's not easy, but you have to be committed to it. Again, it's about what you're willing to do to build a relationship, not what you're capable of. We're all capable of anything, but what are we willing to
Mhm.
do to achieve what we want?
Yeah, well,
And
100. Sorry, go on.
oh no, I was just going to turn it over to you.
No, I mean, I said like just 100% to that. And, just be present and be more intentional, as what Coach Tia said. And practice to give yourself permission to be who you truly are. And again, as I've said, it's not going to be easy because it's going to challenge you every single time, but it's doable and it's possible. So keep up showing up and keep the great things that you can do and do your best. And well, this is the end of our episode for today's live series. Thank you so much for everyone joining and watching us today. Keep rising, keep thriving, keep empowering your minds, and we'll definitely see you again soon. Right, Coach D?
Absolutely. Oh, by the way, maybe we can get everybody to come and we can put them in the stands back here behind me, and we can have a live show here. And we have 'em right here in the stands.
Oh yes, yes. That's a huge stage and huge audience. So yes.
Yeah. I'm
Thank you
kidding.
so much, and
All right. Thank
thank
you
you again
guys.
for this
Appreciate it.
opportunity.
Yep, absolutely. You guys have a great night, and we will see you in our next episode of Rise and Thrive Empowering Minds. I'm Coach T.
Yay.
That's Cindy Marie. See ya.